Good afternoon. We're gonna give us a couple of minutes while all of our attendees filter in. If you'd like to drop in the chat where you are joining us from, we'd love to hear from you all. Chelsea's coming into us from Kentucky. We have somebody from Washington, California. All right, we're gonna get started. We try to stick to our 1 hour timeline. So welcome to Backbones Women and SCI Health Talks. This program is funded by the Christopher and Dana Reeve Foundation. My name is Emily Lacey, and I'm the program coordinator. Today's webinar is being recorded and will be sent to everyone who registered via email. It'll also be uploaded to our YouTube channel, where you can find all of our past recordings. We're going to drop that link in the chat in just a moment here. If you are new to Backbones, our organization is committed to helping people with spinal cord injuries and similar disabilities find connection and community. We do this by hosting events both in person and virtually, facilitating one-on-one peer support and providing resources to individuals with spinal cord injuries and their families when they are trying to navigate life post-injury. I encourage you to check out our website at www.backbonesonline.com to find out more information about all of our programs. We are a community-led program that seeks to bring awareness and education about women's health in the context of spinal cord injuries. Our topics and format were the result of 2 community listening sessions where women with SCI from across the country provided insights. To continue to be community-led and directed, we will send an email tomorrow with a short survey, as well as a copy of this webinar, which you may freely share. The link to the survey is also in the chat. The survey is 5 questions and should only take a few minutes to complete. We thank you in advance for filling this out. In addition to this recorded webinar, we also have a private only for women with SCI small discussion groups to unpack the conversation tonight and share personal experiences and support. If you are interested in a small group, please go to our website at backbonesonline.com and click the program tab. The link will also be dropped in the chat. Lots of links. I will introduce our amazing guest speakers here shortly. We will have a 10 to 15 minute Q&A at the end of the webinar. You are welcome to submit questions for our speakers through the Q&A option or send them directly to me in chat. I will read questions that are submitted. At any point you would like Chelsea or Ali to clarify something, please use the raise your hand option or type your question in chat. Without further ado, it is my pleasure to welcome Ali and Chelsea. Ali is a day trader, disability strategy consultant, Miss Wheelchair North Carolina 2022, writer, blogger, editor, and guest speaker. She started her advocacy mission after being reportedly denied medically necessary equipment by insurance companies over the last 10 years since becoming a C6 quad after a shallow water diving accident. Disability inclusion in our society is a priority to Ali. Oh my goodness, I'm sorry. Is a priority to Ali. She focuses on improving every day. She has a firm, I'm sorry, I am struggling today. She believes in paying it forward by giving back to the community through working with stakeholders in the government, nonprofit world, and partnering organizations to create a more inclusive society and disability employment environment. Chelsea is a registered dietitian and specialist in geriatric nutrition, wounds, and weight loss prior to a car accident in 2010. For the last 4 years, she's been empowering women and building her beauty business. Chelsea and her husband live on a farm in central Kentucky. He is her full-time caregiver and runs a cattle operation. Chelsea uses social media to spread hope and love to anyone in need and shows that despite our circumstances, we can always rebuild ourselves and our self-confidence. Thank you so much for being here this afternoon, Ali and Chelsea. I will now hand the webinar over to you.
Hello, I am Rebecca Torres. I'm going to spotlight all three. Give me a second. Here we go. I'm Rebecca Torres. I am the Executive Director of Backbones, and I am so excited today to be in conversation with both Chelsea and Allie and talking about this really important topic. As Emily mentioned, we had some listening sessions, and this topic kept coming up about, women who had their spouse or their partner be also a caregiver and how to navigate those relationships. And I think it's a complicated one, but it is also one that can have joy and maybe frustration as well. And I'm excited to just hear from you both. And again, thank you for joining us today. So I'd like to get started. And first of all, if you are both willing to share your story briefly about like how you got injured, just so we can have a background of that.
I'll let you take it away, Chelsea, first.
Oh, me? Okay. I drove for a living. I traveled as a dietitian for my company, and I had a car accident. Just my little lone car and myself in 2010, and sustained a C6-7 injury, and took a lot of years to, just kind of surviving day to day for about 8 years, and then finally got tired of my own crap and my own wallowing, and decided to make some changes in my life. And here I am. I'm thriving finally, and doing my best to, enjoy life. So
we have some comments, some love shout outs to you, Chelsea.
right.
How about you, Allie?
Well, I broke my neck in 2010 at my home in the Bahamas, shallow water diving, leaving me a C6 complete quad as well. And I was learning to become a day trader at the time, previously from politics. And I also spent the first 6 years just surviving with pulmonary embolism, cervical cancer, spinal cysts. I actually moved to China for a few years as I speak Chinese for spinal surgery that saved my life, finally moving to Raleigh in 2015 and becoming really active in the disability advocacy community. Initially started with health insurance, fighting insurance companies for medically necessary equipment, and then kind of taking my mission national and working with organizations and individuals, which is graciously titled Miss Wheelchair North Carolina for 2022. And then really expanded beyond that and doing a lot of corporate consulting and working with beautiful organizations run by people with disabilities in the advancement of employment, disability employment, and working to get people with disabilities to work how they want, when they want in the freelance community. So that's what I'm working on now. And I'm kind of a jack of all trades. I really focus on normalizing uncomfortable topics of disability with a dark humor twist, I would say.
I love it. It's great to hear that, that we can be honest about that period of like, we were feeling sorry for ourselves at the beginning, and now you both feel that you are thriving. So let's get in it. You are both married, and I'd love to hear about how you met your husbands and how did you feel about them being your caregivers? I'm sure there was a lot of feelings around that, if there was any guilt or shame or relief or any other feelings. But yeah, first, maybe you could tell us a little bit about how you all met and how it came to be that they also became caregivers.
Chelsea, I'll let you go first.
So I was dating my now husband at the time, and of course I was I was 30, I guess 30 or 31. I don't know. And you know how we women are in our 30s. I was like, come on, it's time to do this thing. And he had it in his mind to wait at least a year. And I had my car accident just shy of that. So we got to the hospital. He proposed while I was on a morphine pump. So of course I said yes. And I don't think that either of us had any clue. Obviously, I don't think anybody really has a clue when something catastrophic like this happens, that you have any idea what all is entailed. But he didn't hesitate to jump in and offer to take care of me. And to be honest, if I had the conversation with anyone at that time, I don't recall it. Of course, I was very open to it because I felt like, I guess I probably didn't even think about it being any other way at the moment if he was going to stay. And once we got to the rehabilitation hospital that I went to, we just kind of took all the steps necessary to put him in place as my caregiver. I know that a lot of people talk to him, you know, and just kind of made sure that he knew what he was getting himself into. And I don't think anybody was coming from a bad place, but I think most people in healthcare setting probably know, not maybe the mental burden. I hate to call it a burden, but I know it is a lot of a mental strain, I think, to put on a spouse to be a caregiver, any kind of caregiver. I mean, caregivers, it's a hard job, but yeah, so we just kind of jumped into it.
I had quite an opposite experience from you, Chelsea, actually. I spent the first 6 years basically, for lack of a better word, asexual. I was dealing with so many medical challenges. I had bladder and bowel issues. I was in depends. I was just trying to fight for my life. So I didn't even think about men. It wasn't until 5 years after my accident, I started dating. And my husband does not love this story, but he was one of my dating experiments to explore my sexuality and disability. And I had a major stage 4 pressure sore at the time, actually, that I hid from him and many others. And finally, I tried to break up with him and he refused. And I fessed up to why I had to break up. And he visited me in the ICU with flowers and teddy bears and started dating a quadriplegic a month in the ICU. So it was kind of like almost a fairy tale story. But, you know, in the beginning, I just thought it would be a passing amusement. I liked him a lot, but we weren't in love yet. And so he knew in the beginning what my life was going to entail. So he started out by dating a quadriplegic. Now, I did not introduce him to any of my caregiving, bowel, bladder, dressing for nearly a year in our relationship. I think that was a mistake. I think I was nervous and I was scared and I wanted the romance part, for however romantic you can be when you're in bed dating a person. I wanted that to last a little longer. So it took us quite a while to kind of dive into the caregiving aspect. And I wasn't shameful or feeling guilty. It was how can a man want to be with me if they're going to see how I go to the bathroom and I dress? I mean, it's not sexy under there, right? There's a leg bag and there's stockings. And so I had my caregivers at the time dress me in lingerie and get me set up in bed, you know, prior to him coming over. So that was a little bit of the beginnings of how we got together.
Thank you. And I'm sure that there has been some challenges that you have faced while you've been, you know, navigating your relationship with your spouse, and then, you know, the caregiving aspect. Can you talk a little bit about those challenges, whether it's been, well, I'll let you talk about those challenges and then I might ask more questions.
For us, that more recently, I think we've really been trying to, trying to separate the caregiving relationship from the the husband-wife relationship, trying to make sure that we designate time to us together as a couple versus caregiving. We are together all the time. We're together all the time. And that's very stressful, I think, on him. So that's one of the biggest challenges, I think, that I know that he has a hard time with, is separating the two moments in time in his brain, not that he's always on caregiver duty, even if he's with me. So we've had to really concentrate on separating those moments so that it doesn't seem like a constant caregiver relationship.
I imagine also, I mean, and you can say a little bit about this, is like alone time. Like you said, you're together all the time, but and I experience this as well, having caregivers around. Like, I want my alone time too. How do you navigate that?
And for us, a lot of times I will say, I say together all the time constantly, but he will go out onto the farm and do things without me. And that kind of gives me some alone time. And he has his time in the evenings when he goes to his little man cave and kind of disconnects. But we just kind of do what we got to do, or I go visit my parents and stay with them to give him, a week off or whatever. But it's definitely something we have to plan, and we're not very good at it.
Right. Everything is really about planning. So, I had a little bit of the opposite experience. When we started dating, I had 24/7 living caregivers. So I was very strict about not blurring those lines. And then over time, within about 2 years, we wanted to go on a vacation together. So we learned about program and dressing, and as best a man can learn how to straighten a woman's hair, we did our best. And it was great. And after about 2.5 years, we decided we want to have a little alone time on the weekend. So I stopped having a caregiver from Saturday midday to Monday. And I don't think there was a specific point, but things started to go downhill from my perspective. And I don't think he thinks it's from his perspective, but when you have a caregiver and someone you work with, and also employee versus a husband, you have the sexual relationship, and the lines get blurred. So it's my body. I feel like I should be able to do what I want, how I want to do it with my body. I will give up a lot of the house stuff. That's fine. But, guys, I hate to say it, sometimes they want to do things their way, right? Well, I don't like the way you put this on your leg or you pull down your pants. I have a better way. And that can be really, really tricky because it makes me feel trapped, and it makes me feel guilty for kind of wanting or needing help. So that is not working for us presently. I just am working on training someone on the weekends to get back that independence. So if he wants to go somewhere on the weekends, he can go, and I'll be covered for that. And I think that that's making things better for me. I don't know for him, because he's, pretty amenable, but that is, I always have dealt with the challenge of feeling guilty for needing help. I'm so mentally independent, and I can do so much, and I do so much in a day. But the biggest fear and anxiety in my life is the caregiving part, whether it's a husband, a caregiver, or a mother. And my mother, she's 76, but she has been my rock. And I would not be here without her, physically, mentally, and or otherwise.
You mentioned something interesting too, of almost like not wanting to compromise your care for your own personal body, and that's super valid. Do you feel then there's times where you may, and this goes for either of you, that you may have to compromise your care, or you let things go to avoid a fight or something like that?
I let a lot of things go to avoid a fight. And so my husband is very good at checking my toes and making sure I'm physically safe. The way in which he does it, or the way I like it, it's not always, agreeable, and it makes me frustrated. So I do feel like I just stay quiet to avoid a fight. I mean, I think any relationship, right? There's just an extra set of challenges when you have a disability. So I definitely stay quiet to avoid a fight. And I also think it's probably important to mention that whoever is helping you, whether it's husband, lover, caregiver, parent, I find myself compartmentalizing my own emotions a lot of times because whoever's taking care of you, if they're in a bad mood or you're not being very nice to them, they don't want to help you. So I find that I'm always a ray of sunshine, and sometimes inside I'm kind of yelling to myself. But that's one of the biggest challenges for me, with our marriage.
I just let things go as well sometimes, but it's definitely, I have probably all this, I feel like I have the same feelings as you, Allie, in those situations, but you have been stronger than me, from the aspect of, doing something about it. With that being said, I feel like my husband and I have worked through a lot of challenges as far as him not doing something that I want the way I want, or, accommodations I've made like that is, okay, I'm wearing more clothes that I can do myself, or I'm doing things the way I'm able to do them independently. That way I don't have to have him help me and have him do it the wrong way, or the way I don't want him to. So I've accommodated my life in that way. I don't wear clothes that I can't put on myself unless I'm going to something more special, because I just don't want to deal with him. So I have made some compromises, but the more we push through things, it's.
How long have you been married, Chelsea?
We just had our 12-year anniversary last week.
Okay, so I'm a newbie. Congratulations. Yes, I'm in the like that 3 to 5 year period where they say disability or not, that's when marriage is the hardest.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm a little grateful. I make light of it. I always go, oh, I was on drugs during that period of time, so it got me through any of the really bad stuff. But it is what it is, and we've gotten to the other side. And he's my absolute best friend, and I love spending the time with him. And as a woman, though, I'm like, well, I know I've seen you all day, but I would love to. I just want to spend more time with you. And he's like, dude, I need a break.
And my husband's the opposite. He never needs a break from me. But since the beginning of day one of my injury, I've always had living caregivers. So other than my thoughts, I quite literally don't have any privacy. Like I'll go outside for an hour, meditate, or take my chair and take a little roll, but someone's always around. That was hard in the beginning. I've learned to adjust psychologically, but it was step by step, little by little over the years.
Mm-hmm.
When we talked in preparation for this webinar, I remember one of you, and I don't remember which one of you mentioned, but that you had spoken to other women who have said things like, that they've felt stuck sometimes in their relationships because their partner was their caregiver, and they thought, if I were to leave, what were to happen to me? Do you guys have any additional thoughts or things to say about that?
Oh yeah, I've spoken with, when I was in a really challenging time mentally in my marriage, I reached out to on the spinal cord Facebook groups, and I spoke with a handful of women who had been married. And caregiving is a huge challenge. So if you don't have a spouse or a lover or someone to take care of you, you're relying on agencies or private duty. And you may find, when you find a great caregiver, my God, hold on to them as long as you can. But the fact of the matter is they have their own lives too. And while you may want them to stay for years, anything can happen. And sometimes, at least for me too, and I've chatted with other women, it's like when you're in a marriage, even if it's not perfect and there are challenges, you do feel stuck. You know that they're going to be there and they'll wake up, even if you fight, versus someone may be sick or just not show up for work. But if your husband's sick, he's going to suck it up and take care of you as well. So that I deal with that, that challenge a lot, just from like, I've had my mom for 12 years, but she's 76, right? And, that can be challenging as well. I don't want to put too much pressure on him, but, sometimes I wish I could just be like, you know what? I need a weekend. I'm out the door. But, that's not something I can do.
And I've really thought, I've thought about this plenty of times. I mean, you can love someone and you can be their best friend and you can appreciate them, but at the same time, you know, I guess we can't be future fortune tellers, but I've thought, you know, what would my life be like if this didn't work out? If this is just too hard to do it this way. But you know, look at what all we've gone through. I think that every single one of us would survive, whether we have that person or we don't have that person. I mean, I know I would be okay. I don't have to have him. I don't have to have him be the one. And like Allie said, you know, having to hire a caregiver from the outside definitely is a challenge. But we make it and we get through it. And you know,
That's a good point with the finances too, right? With caregiving. So, you know, you're kind of in two camps, right? You're on Medicare and Medicaid, which sometimes only provide you a certain number of hours per week or month or whatever that might be. Or you are fortunate to make your own money, but you have to make a lot of it because to hire private duty caregivers is really, really expensive, right? And then you have that spouse who is obviously, they're more than free of charge, but they're there for you at the same time. So I've run into a lot of women who have actually stayed in marriages because they financially couldn't do it on their own, which I respect and I get, and my heart breaks at the same time. I mean, that's a huge challenge. And, you know, even being penalized, I can't get Medicaid because, well, I make too much money, but my husband, you know, we got married. And that's a huge challenge. I can't even do the Medicaid buy-in. So it's like constant roadblocks left and right.
it is. It's a lot of hurdles.
I proposed getting divorced last year to my husband, even though we just got married, and he did not like that idea. So I'm still working on it.
You bring up a good point though. Like a lot of people don't actually go through the legal marriage because of that, like being scared of losing benefits or health insurance or things like that.
Criminal. That is just criminal.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think if we changed, and that's one of the biggest hurdles. I mean, you know, in the times that we've had a lot of marital problems, that is the biggest thing to wrap your brain around is how do I completely change my whole, you know, it affects everything. There are a lot of things. And as much as we all go through on a daily basis as it is, and then you think of like, okay, I've got to figure out how I'm going to, you know, finance my whole life again and, you know, upend everything. So it's more than just, it's more than just leaving your spouse, because there's so many other factors that you then have to figure out if you change.
Even if you're married, depending on the state, the rules are a little different, but you can do Medicaid buy-in. So you could get on Medicaid, and based on your income level, you pay a certain amount. But even with you can only have so many assets, and then you have to set up first-party need trust, third-party need trust, and all kinds of trust structures. And you have to pay a lawyer, right? And then it's so complicated. And I know a lot of great women who run nonprofits who help with the resource planning. But when you're trying to survive your day sometimes, or your marriage, or your relationship, and UTIs and osteoporosis and God knows what else, it's like I can take a lot, but I can only take so many things in one day, right?
Yeah, you have to figure out which battle you're going to do every day.
Yeah, exactly.
And we have a comment. Someone, Alyssa, says, yes, this affects many of our lives. And we have another comment from Misty. I completely agree. A lot of times you have to let things go in order to keep the peace in relationships and caregiving. So I can't imagine doing it every day with one person you love to be around.
You know, you also have to take that outside perspective. So I've had a couple week vacation with my husband, and Chelsea, you say your husband takes care of you as your primary caregiver. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
See, I haven't had that, but I had a couple weeks, and I love my husband, but I quite literally thought I was going to murder him. I mean, my hat's off to you, but I think some relationships work and some don't. And I'm learning that he can't be my caregiver. That makes time for me personally to, you know, have the romance time. But now we're both working ferociously that we're so tired sometimes at the end of the day. And my nerve pain is exhausting, and I don't want to be touched at nighttime or snuggled with. I'm like, just, I need to like still like a vegetable, honey. And I imagine that's hard for him as well, right? You know, and whenever we are intimate together and he doesn't have the caregiver hat on, he's got to do all the work. I mean, it's just like body mechanics, right? You know, I think we have a good sex life, and I'm sure he will love to hear that when we air this. It's, you know, I wonder sometimes too where my insecurities come in. It's like, even, you know, in a sexual relationship, and when he's not my caregiver, there's only so many positions I can do. I have osteoporosis, I get autonomic dysreflexia, right? So, you know, I wish sometimes I could do more than I can, but I can't, and that's just part of who I am.
How do you kind of come to terms with that, or how have you, where like you feel that you are equally giving back to the relationship, you know, and rather than feeling like, you know, your husband is giving you all the time?
Mentally, sexually, physically, which aspect are you talking about?
Whatever you want to share. I guess mentally is most what I was. Yeah.
Mentally, I do a lot. I don't worry about that because I have my caregiving taken care of for the most part, unless there's emergency check. I make all my own finances, check. Doesn't have to worry about that for me. I do the grocery shopping. I get the house clean. I get everything organized. I am like a little powerhouse, crazy, psychotic organizer, you know? And you know what, damn it, he should feel lucky. So to be fair, I don't depend on him for a lot in that regard. But I've always been that way.
I think, well, for him, I had to really figure out, you said, how do we give to them? Is that what you're saying?
How do you feel, you know,
how do I not feel that I'm always taking?
Right.
Basically. I have, and this is how we've both grown, I think, too. As a married couple, I had to figure out what his, you know, what his love language is. And he constantly, he's the kind that needs assurance. He is a touchy-feely kind of person. And like Allie said, you know, I think our bodies are so overstimulated so much that a lot of times at night, I'm like, okay, you can go to your side of the bed because you're smothering me. But it's just basically that I don't need any more stimuli in my life. So I've got to make sure I give him a couple minutes of love and patting on him and, you know, babe, you did a great job today, and all those things to kind of not necessarily feed his ego, but just, you know, kind of give him that.
His love language.
Yeah.
My husband has the same love language. I'm with you. And I do the same thing, even when it hurts sometimes. And because I'm firstly independent, I do have to stop myself, and where I fall short sometimes myself is I have to be like, okay, this is his love language. I just need to stop, and I need to listen and just have a little snuggle time. And because I have so many things in my life I want to get done in a day, and I'm like, go, go, go all the time, I have to stop myself. Just like if I want a Reese's, I'm not going to eat the Reese's. I'm going to have some self-control. I have to have the control to stop with him and give him what he needs. You know, it does need to be equal, but I think there are times in life too where relationships aren't equal. I may need him a little bit more. He may need me a little bit more.
Yeah, and some comments. So hard giving up control to others sometimes. And also another comment, this is so important, knowing that you are an equal partner. Alyssa, you articulated that much better than I did. That's what I was trying to say. Thank you. You also mentioned a little bit about going to therapy and how that helped you address some of these challenges. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Therapy for me was, I think, fantastic. The control thing is one that therapy really helped me with, because I'm like, it sounds like a lot of us are probably similar in that, we're independent women, and I've always done everything for myself. I'm the oldest child. I'm the oldest of 4 girls. And so I've always been the independent one, and I did everything for myself, and I've never depended on anybody to help me. I just would get it done. And so giving up control was probably the hardest thing for me, just, from the very get-go. But then I slowly would pull David into therapy sessions, just so I thought it would be good for him to see where a lot of my anxiety and frustration comes from. Because I know that a lot of times I would take my frustrations out on him, even if it didn't have anything to do with him. It was just me being pissed off because I couldn't do what I wanted to do. So therapy really gave, I feel like, him an insight into my feelings, but then it also opened the door for he and I to be able to communicate what our challenges were together. And I got to learn more about what his feelings were, as far as, just me being in the car accident. He had a lot of guilt. Well, if I'd never moved to the town I moved in, maybe I wouldn't have been driving the road that I was driving that day. And so therapy really got us to communicate more about the harder things. So it was a really good experience for us, although trying to get a man in therapy is hard, period. So I kind of had to trick him a little bit and make it about me. And then, you find a therapist. We found a great one, then he retired, and we've tried 2 or 3 others, and they just don't work, because usually, the kind of man my husband is, it just has to be a particular type of person for him to be receptive. So it's,
I think that's any man. I ran into the same thing. You have to find, I'm receptive to a lot, but we had to find the right one.
Yeah.
It kind of failed I wouldn't say it failed, but I don't think it was during the pandemic when my husband wasn't working for the better part of a year and is at home all day, and I was working full time, and things were challenging. Life is challenging, but things were more challenging then. And I started to feel like I was wasting the money on the therapist, and I don't think we got very far. He said it made him feel poorly after our sessions together, and it was just a way for me to talk about the way I was feeling, and I couldn't do that. Why couldn't I do that to him personally? And why did we need an intermediary to talk about that? I said, because sometimes having a third party is really good, and you just can't express the emotions the way you want to privately, or they get misconstrued. So it's great to have like an interpreter, right? A psychological interpreter. But that one is for me to be continued in work in progress.
And I think ours is too. I think you continuously evolve in relationships and in your life. And I wouldn't say that I think there's always room for improvement. So I think our door is still open for that as well.
Can I ask you a question, Chelsea? So you've been married, you said 10 or 12 years or so.
Mm-hmm.
Do you find that there were periods that were so intensely challenging that you contemplated not being together? How did you work through that? As the newbie married person, I would love to know that.
Yeah. So we, so how did we navigate it? We take a break a lot of time, if we get to that, we've had a couple of them, and a lot of times I will go to my parents' house, so that we have just a complete separation for, usually as long as I can stand to be out of town, because that I'm out of my comfort zone. It's not my bed. My lift's not there. The houses aren't as accessible. So we try to separate and give each other a break. And a lot of times I think it's more about his need for just a complete mental break, to know that I'm taken care of. I'm somewhere where I'm going to be okay. That's usually the height of things, is when he's not had much of a break. There's something else going on, in his outside life. And, emotions just keep building until they've hit the ceiling. But that's usually what has helped.
Does he take guy time, like a weekend with the guys or anything?
I've tried to get him to do that. We bought him a camper so he could take it to like the way back of the farm. And I'm like, I could just be like, send your mom over and you take the camper and go to the back of the farm and just do your thing. But I think it's easier when he can have a couple days to himself at the house and just sleep, basically. And do his farm work himself, and not have that little thing in the back of his brain is Chelsea okay? Does she need something? Should I be, whatever it is. So
that's why I'm hiring a weekend caregiver, because I'm going to force him out to say, go camping, go with your friends, do something. But I think it's healthy.
Yeah. And I do have a luxury of my in-laws are right next door. So anytime he needs to be or wants to be gone, and that's very loose, because usually it's, in the front field mowing hay with his dad. But his mother-in-law can, help meet my needs. So he doesn't turn off the switch if he's not physically inside the house. It's still his responsibility. And so that's why I've got to kind of remove him from the situation for a while, which, is usually me going and staying with my family.
That's a really good question. That was a really good question, Ellie. I encourage our listeners and audience to start thinking about some questions. There'll be some Q&A time. You can put them in the chat, or raise your hand if you want to audibly state your question. But I do still have more questions for you both. We've talked a lot about challenges, but I want to go into some really the other direction. How has your husband being your caregiver or your primary caregiver brought you joy or intimacy or positivity into your life and into your relationship?
For me, it's these small things, right? So he gets home for work, and I'm called like Princess and the Pea. It's a joke. Like, you look at me and I get a pressure sore. I've been in bed for over 2 years with pressure sores. So if my feet aren't on a pillow and my heels aren't hanging, I will get a pressure sore. So he comes home and the first thing he does is make sure my legs are spread, my heels aren't on the bed, make sure there's no bowel issues, that my catheter is draining properly, that I'm tucked in. I have a lot of stuffed animals at 39 years old. I do. I snuggle with them. And it's like those little things, right? Sometimes I wish, I had a husband that planned these big trips, but I'm the planner. I do that. That's what I'm really good at. So it's those little things, that knowing that somebody is there, that I try with my caregivers to check every detail, but sometimes I can't see everything. And he goes behind them and double checks that. And that, to me, is more than planning some elaborate vacation somewhere.
For us, I think it's just made, it's made us strong as a team, I think, going through this. I can't imagine, sometimes I feel like I want to smother him in his sleep. And then on the flip side, I'm like, but I can't imagine him not being here with me and doing this with me. And we're a great team, and we're a well-oiled machine most days. So, and we've been that way since the very beginning of our relationship. Like even before the accident, we just were a good team. So it's brought us closer. And as our marriage has evolved, you know, it's taken 12 years. You know, some things start to fall into place, and then you find another challenge, and you work through that, and then you get stronger. And you know, I think it's brought us closer to be able to work through not only the regular everyday marriage challenges, but also the caregiving challenges. So it's a lot to navigate, and it's been a lot to navigate, and it's been very challenging at times for us. And there were times where it was like, you know, is it really worth it? Because I would always have those questions, like, if I lived by myself, then I'm telling someone else what to do, and it's not my husband, and I don't feel bad. Like, where you are very, you're able to communicate very easily with your husband. Like, if he's doing something wrong, I feel like you're good at it sounds like, I feel like you sound like you're way better at giving direction.
Yeah, I have the opposite problem. I'm better at giving directions with the caregivers than I am with my husband.
Well, and that's what you know, I'm always like, it would be so much easier to tell somebody what to do who's not my husband, because then I don't know. It just seems like it would be an easier scenario. And they wouldn't necessarily talk back as much. I mean, I would be nice about it, and I wouldn't be ugly about it, but hopefully, you know, they would do it because that was their job. But I don't know. I don't know if that answers the question or not.
Yeah, and I think you bring up, you know, to like your point, Allie, too, that there's almost, it kind of sounds like a sense of relief too, to not have to be on top of all the micromanaging that we have to do of our bodies. You know, having this person who kind of already knows and can be like a double check, you know, at the end of your day. And that sounds, to me, that sounds like relief, and like a little bit of like the pressure off of myself to have to do it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
We do have a question in the chat. Someone says, how do your husbands deal with other caregivers?
Oh, that's a great question. For me, in the beginning, they were there in the beginning. So he doesn't really know any differently. And he always accepted that. And I think we had this one conversation years ago, and we were drunk. I don't know if he remembers it, but I do. And he said, he was very honest, like, you know, I don't know how our relationship may have worked out in the beginning had you not been financially stable yourself. And I knew I was maybe going to have to take care of you, and that you didn't have caregivers, and I was going to have to do it all. It's a very honest answer, right? Because not everyone is cut out to be a full-time caregiver. We run into issues sometimes because I've, 2 or 3 caregivers. He kind of keeps to himself a little bit. And he's really great in that regard. And he, when I have my caregiving time, he kind of steps out of it and he completely disconnects. So we don't have any issues. But I'm a really good teacher because I've been through 67 caregivers in 12 years. And I'm not even into the horror stories, but I'm very good at being the intermediary between different people's emotions, because in my life, I've got a husband, I've got a mother who lives next to me who is German, and probably should leave it at that. And then I have multiple caregivers with all different personalities and all of their different challenges. So trying to navigate an in-law and a husband and multiple caregivers is outrageous. And yes, I saw from the question, he does scrutinize their work sometimes. And I say, honey, let it go. Just like I say to my mom, let it go. But everyone has their own little things they like to nitpick the living heck out of. I'm the one that hears all of it. I have to handle everyone's emotional baggage. I compartmentalize very well. That's really hard for me, but I've become so accustomed to it. It's now not a thought in my head, but it does cause a lot of personal anxiety on a regular basis.
It's like conflict management all
I
the
would be
time.
I would be an incredible FBI hostage negotiator. I'm just saying in another life that.
My husband's very critical of other people taking care of me, which is, sometimes he wants me to go take a break, like at my family or wherever with my family, but he doesn't trust anybody else. Which is one of his problems.
We have a question from Tiffany, and I believe she wanted to, I'm gonna allow talk so she can ask her question. Okay, you're on, Tiffany.
Hello. So with this goes back to Allie, when you were first dating your husband and you had pressure sores. How do you navigate around those when it comes to intimacy? And I mean, even still, I don't know with pressure sores how you navigate around those and deal with all that.
You want the brutal, honest answer
Yes,
of what
I
I
do.
actually
I
did?
do. Yes.
Okay.
I do.
Well, I had been dealing with stage 3-4 pressure sore for a while. So I was on a wound vacuum, and I had 4 to 5 months before they were going for a flap surgery, which I knew I was going to have anyway. And so I would be on the wound vacuum, rolling back and forth in bed every day while online dating. And then for a couple hours every other day, I would get up for dates, and I would quite literally take off the wound vacuum, stuff some saline gauze in this 3-centimeter hole, and put a Band-Aid on my butt. And then I would weight shift on my elbows during my dates. And then in my quote underwear dates, that's what I called my sex dates, I would have my caregivers dress me in lingerie, put some more gauze on it, slap a Band-Aid on it. I figure, what's the worst that can happen for a few hours? And actually with my husband, and it worked really well, but with my husband, one night, it was our second or third date, and he picked me up and I'm naked, and oh God, the Band-Aid fell out of my butt. And he's like, there is a bloody gauze on the floor. Like, it's just a scratch on my butt. Just kick it under the bed. It's fine. It's fine. And he laid me flat on the bed. And I made him leave like 15 to 20 minutes later, because I figured I was probably bleeding from the hole in my butt. And I later fessed up to him, but I had to take it with a grain of salt, because I'm like, this is like my 8th or 9th surgery coming up. What's the worst that can happen? So I hid it, but I try to be comical about it. So that's the honest truth of how I hid that pressure sore. I don't recommend it, but I was also I hadn't had, sex in 5 years. So I really wanted to explore sexuality and dating and what that was like, and give confidence to women and give confidence to myself. I'm a kind of do it for the story kind of girl, and I probably pushed things a little bit too far. So because of the first time I had sex, I was like paralyzed Barbie, and I put my legs behind my head and I broke my sacrum, which is not recommended. So I would say go slow, experiment safely, but don't try that at home.
Thanks for your question, Tiffany. Were you going to add something, Chelsea? Or I heard
No,
someone.
I wasn't. I'm luckily I haven't had that experience yet.
Good. So glad for you, Chelsea. Excellent. I'm not repeating that. To be fair though, right? What they don't tell you a lot when you break your neck is get a bone density scan. And a lot of people, quadriplegics, you're going to develop osteoporosis anyway. Now, the rate at which you do that, I don't know if that's genetic or what factors are contributing. Standing a few times a week, I'm not sure how much that helps, because the research isn't out there, but I developed it at a rapid rate, and I kept breaking everything. And then I finally got a bone density scan 5 years in, and I have the osteoporosis of an 85-year-old. And I found a very strong injection, a great one, experimented, and now it's stabilized. But, things to consider too when getting intimate with someone is, your bones.
Yeah, and having to communicate that with someone too is really important. Do you, before we wrap up, we have a few more minutes. Do you have any questions for each other?
Chelsea, I'm going to call you on your cell phone and ask you for marriage advice when I need it, when I'm going through time. I'm just saying, yes.
Do it. And I don't have all the answers. I can just tell you what we've done. I mean, there's, I've looked for my own apartments. I mean, I have gotten to that point in the past 12 years for sure. And I try to, you know, manage expectations of what I think life would be like without him and with him. And I think if we, you know, there's a lot of guilt. I have a lot of guilt a lot of times because I think he gave up his life. He gave up his job. He, you know, I think at some point or another, we probably all feel like a burden to somebody. So I have to deal with those feelings as well, but we just try to take it day by day. And, you know, I think with any partner, you know, there's always those, all the other things too. So it's navigating life.
Sometimes it's taking it minute by minute, quite literally.
I think this whole, like our whole life is minute to minute, you know?
It is. And you know, unlike you, I haven't had my husband rely on him intensely for anything for long periods of time. I think for us, that would put tremendous strain. He always said he was willing to do it, and I know he means it, but I think for us, that would not be great. And it took me a long time to realize that it's okay for my husband to not be my caregiver too. Even though I wish sometimes he was a little bit more active, but that might be my fault as well, because I do push away because of those feelings of being a burden and a guilt. And that's on me, not him.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you both are awesome, badass women, thriving. And I thank you so much for joining me in this conversation. I know that I learned a lot from you, and I can tell from the comments that the people that have attended also feel the same way. And they're thanking you for sharing your experiences and for being pretty open and honest about it. I think that's what we need, right? We need to hear from each other. And I love that you're already talking about staying connected between the two of you. I mean, I think in our community, that's so important to just find that peer support and keep helping each other. I know Emily, I'm going to bring Emily back on if she is going to share a little bit about the upcoming webinars that we have. We can't hear you.
I realized I was muted once I started talking. Thank you to everyone for being here this afternoon. Especially a big thank you to Allie and Chelsea. Thank you for your honesty, and I definitely learned a lot. I know Rebecca just said that. I'm sure everybody feels that way. Our upcoming webinars, which are open to the public, our next one is Pathways to Motherhood in May. Pregnancy is June, and July is preventative health care. Please remember that if you are a woman with an SCI, we host small group discussions. That's to help dive deeper into these topics and facilitate community. You're welcome to join us. And if you know somebody who would like to join our group or benefit from seeing this webinar, please share the YouTube link that you'll be receiving tomorrow. And if you could please take a few minutes to fill out the survey that's about to be dropped in the chat. It helps us to continue to be community-led. It also gives us valuable feedback to edit these webinars so they continue to be beneficial to everyone. All right, thank you, everyone. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye.
I thank you.